Okay. Hi, I'm recovering from a cold. I'm Michelle Renee in San Diego, and I wanted to record this call with James because we're going to talk about a client that we saw yesterday together. And I thought this might be some really valuable information that we should capture and potentially share down the road. We already have the consent of the client to talk to each other and to talk about it publicly without, giving away any identities. This client is a female, late 20s here in San Diego. I started seeing her for platonic touch back in July of 2018. And I think I referred her to James. Was it like October, November,
That
James?
sounds about right. It's been a few months.
Yeah. Um, she came to me very distrusting of men. I introduced her to a male practitioner from Cuddlist that she felt comfortable with. So she started to move towards trusting some men, which was a really big step for her. And James was another one of the men that I referred her to. So, James, why don't you introduce yourself and let people know who you are and what you do?
Okay. Well, I'm James. I'm home based here in San Diego, California, and I recently retired, like last year, from a 28-year career in law enforcement, and now I'm working in with bodies. I'm a body worker, and one thing I noticed in that previous career is that the area that gets missed the most and that can have the most impact is the body. We do a lot of work with talk and a lot of work in the mind space, but we really tend to neglect the body. So I really wanted to focus on that as I started out in a new profession. So I've undergone a lot of training the last few years. I'm a Reiki practitioner, a yoga teacher, an intimacy coach, a sexological body worker, and I'm trained as a surrogate partner. I'm also training to be a cuddlist like Michelle. So I feel like I have enough tools now, kind of like when I was in the previous career, I had different tools on my tool belt I could go to. I feel that way now where I can kind of meet a client where they are on the touch spectrum and help them to move forward to the goals and the intentions that they have for their life. And really, the touch is key for the body. I like to call it a bootstrap. It's like the quickest way to access and move towards where they want. But not everybody's comfortable with it. And that was one of the challenges that we had working with this client. That's about it for me. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Um, I had a thought while you were saying that, and I can't remember what it was. Um, let me just catch up. So we got to this point with this client where she was seeing both of us, and we were kind of working in a triad. I guess you'd say it's a triadic model, just we're used to thinking of that with a therapist involved. But the three of us were definitely working together. And during our sessions, she started to talk about how there was this thing she wanted to explore. She didn't have the words to really describe it, or she had the words to describe it, she didn't have the labels to name it. And she desired more play, so like wrestling, and this is more of she had an interest in it in like more of a sexual nature, correct, James? If that's a good way to describe it. She was looking for something, not to actually experience it at the time, but she had a curiosity around this.
Yeah, I could say that she was experiencing like some sexual turn on around aggressive touch, and she thought it would be pleasurable to engage in like wrestling
Mm-hmm.
as
Yeah.
as maybe a sexual outlet.
Yeah, we talked about it in a session, and I have a background where I was able to quickly name that thing and say, oh, you're interested in primal play. That's a type of play that is familiar in the BDSM world. And I think she took that kind of back and forth between you and me, like kind of sorting out what does that look like and how can I learn more about it. Um, anything you want to add to that?
No, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were having a conversation probably a couple of weeks ago, and she disclosed that she thinks the reason she's interested in that kind of play is possibly because it's tied to some sexual abuse as a child. That's her grasp, I think, at trying to understand why she's curious about this play. Is that
Yeah, that
fair?
sounds about right. But let's also say that she has no specific memory or recollection of an incident. If there was some kind of abuse, it happened at maybe a very young age where she doesn't remember the details.
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't really connect directly like a trauma to it. It's more as like some memories of something from her distant past.
Yeah, like a familiar feeling maybe around it, but not necessarily an idea, like
Yes.
a specific memory, right?
Yes.
So at that point, I got really curious about the idea of wrestling with her in a session. So and this is James and I talked about it many times, like what could that look like? And I reached out to some other practitioners to see, like, am I playing with fire? Kind of, could I possibly wake something up? And did I have the background to handle the possibility of triggering her? And after some conversation with a couple of people, I felt comfortable to engage with her physically around that. But I asked that James also be involved. I didn't want to do it by myself, and James really wasn't able to do it either.
Some of the restrictions around sexological body work is that it's one-way touch, client, practitioner to client. So a mutual exchange in a wrestling environment really wasn't appropriate within those guidelines. We should also say that she's done a lot of self-work on herself too, engaged in different organizations where she does a lot of communication training, has had a lot of life coaching. So I really felt that addressing some possible trauma that she didn't have specific recollection about from long in her past, even with all of her self-work that she's done more recently, that we were well equipped, trauma informed, to handle what came up with grounding.
Yeah, I also trusted that she knew what she was getting into,
Mm-hmm.
and that she was able to fully consent to participating in this.
Yes.
She was very aware of what was possible. So we did that yesterday.
Yes.
And this is James and I, like, I thought maybe we should, like, decompress and or sort through what we saw and what we felt about the session yesterday. It was a little difficult to get started because I don't know, nobody really knew what we should do. It was a kind of a collaboration.
Well, kind of as we thought about what it would look like, I think we had different viewpoints based on our different backgrounds. I have some sons that were involved in wrestling, competitive wrestling. So I was framing it from that point of view, as in, how can I make it safe because there's rules and boundaries around that sport, and also maybe an opportunity to score it or to officiate at it to keep it within boundaries and control. And you had a completely different viewpoint of what it looked like.
Yeah, like I have a client that I wrestle with, every time he comes. It's the only kind of session we have. It's just kind of, I call it controlled roughhousing. Like, I imagine if I was roughhousing with my siblings, very much like that. It's fun. It's a lot of laughter. It's not an angry aggression. It's like just fun, playful assertiveness, I guess. And so I was just kind of from that framework. I've been in competitive sports, I've never been a wrestler. So James was really great at, like, kind of giving us ideas as our time progressed, like how to get started getting that kind of competitive energy going. So we started with, like, arm wrestling, and kind of played in different, how could we possibly trigger her? Like it almost became a challenge at a point of like, how can we stay within boundaries, which we were really good at. I think we had a really good talk at the beginning around what am I okay with? I started to realize that I don't know if she has a throttle to control herself if she was to get triggered, or if she was just super competitive, would she know how to pull back?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it was kind of unknown.
Part of the discussion initially was setting those boundaries, setting some limits. Yeah.
Encouraging a lot of conversation. That was another thing we talked about, was like, let us know everything that's going on for you. Don't
Well,
hold
you'd
anything back.
mentioned the meta from
Meta,
another. Mhm.
yeah, meta communication from Janet Trevino. Yeah. So yeah, basically we just tiptoed in and kept upping the,
Kind of the intensity or
yeah,
the
yeah, to the point that we had her blindfolded so she couldn't tell I was coming. Like, really trying to take advantage of the different senses that would trigger something. And we can say we didn't trigger her.
yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
I guess I'm not going to say that's successful or unsuccessful. That's just what happened.
We tried, in addition to the arm wrestling, we did a couple other little, kind of like the kind of games you play when you're a kid, the competitive, like the slap hands, and kind of a test of strength or a feat of strength. You moved into some like pushing down, pushing and shoving, kind of playful onto the bed, and then some kind of just body weight holding down. And I think it was really good that she got to experience both types of kind of being dominated and then being the dominant one, and being challenged with escaping or retaining control.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, she handled everything really well. We were adding more things in. Could we add a length of time, or could we add some uh, surprise in? I think is what we were talking about with the time. So you don't know when different keys are going to happen, and then taking away other senses like the blindfold. All of that was really helpful, and she's seemed grounded and centered and controlled, and enjoyed it. Shared about things that she called them familiar. Like there was a spot where she was talking about the breath on a neck or the body weight, and she said that was a familiar feeling to her. We didn't attach any meaning to it. We suggested several possibilities that could have been, that weren't necessarily negative.
Mm-hmm.
Might have helped her to understand or regain it.
Yeah, I thought of it as kind of giving her permission to not put a negative connotation with it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the point where she said it was a turn on to her. It was arousing to her, and I was like excited for her, like, yay, you have one of your turn ons now, and I found it really telling that her response was, like, does that make me bad that this is a turn on? And it's like, gosh, like, can we reframe that to like, how wonderful that you know something that you like, and let's not have shame around it.
Yes.
Yeah. Anywho, um, so what do you think we're gonna do next? Do you think there is
I
a
don't
next?
know. I was thinking about that. I was wondering what influence. I was curious, one, for what influence my presence in the room had on that interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And now knowing that those events that we didn't trigger her in a way that she fought or fled or disassociated or anything, that she could manage that. I'm curious. I didn't feel like there was anything there. She even mentioned that there were times she forgot I was there, which is very normal.
Mm-hmm.
you get caught up in the play to not realize things on the periphery. But I wonder if there might be another step to see, well, what happens if I'm not there, or maybe I'm outside or something.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think because we've made it clear that it's a sexual turn on to her, that as a platonic touch practitioner, that's probably where I kind of
A boundary.
Yeah, like we make a vow we make a vow of silence. We make an agreement not to go purposely into the sexual realm, and so I think that's probably where my work with that particular part of her ends. Um, I I can't see a reason for us to keep working like that with or without you in the room, because again, I feel like that kind of limits, like that's the limit of, I also see her as a client, but to play in that space is probably not a good idea.
It might be interesting just to see what, as time goes and she processes this experience, to see what influence it has. Like,
Yeah.
bring it up in a few weeks and ask her about it if anything's come up for her. Sure.
Yeah. I think having you there kept those boundaries more in place, the non-sexual boundaries. I think I have a thing about people in groups self-policing better. So I think it kept the container really clear with you there, because we kept going back into it. It wasn't like we said, oh, she announced that it was a turn on for her pretty quickly. I think the first time I was holding her down, she talked about it. So it's not that we didn't ever go back to that. We obviously played in that playground for the rest of our session, but I think it was still very much therapeutic, and it was platonic from my side. And you know what I mean? Like we were doing small little, we weren't letting it escalate.
Right. You didn't encourage it or build on it. You shifted,
Right.
changed slightly, or there was a break in the play to give that some time. Yeah.
Right. It didn't build.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So
I think, no, that's all right. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, so I would be happy to work together on something again, or if she has another thing she wants to work on, even if it's related, if it's not the wrestling thing, or it's like I'm not opposed to still going down this path with her, but it's just going to have to look a little bit different for the next time we do that.
Right. And I realized what I was going to say. It was related to the group dynamic of maybe better behavior or controlled behavior in a group. There was also, I was able to be an uninvolved observer. I wasn't a participant, so I could kind of keep that distance to see the big picture throughout it and notice things if they were happening. I mean, I wasn't right there. You were closer to see her reactions, but at least I could still kind of see big picture if you got absorbed or involved into it.
Yeah, I enjoyed you being there. I thought it felt like a safety.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like the collaboration was nice. I don't have a lot of words for it, but I thought I felt good having you there. And I think that working like that was perfect for this. I don't think doing it by ourselves, I don't know. I've stuck on words around this.
No, I
I
don't
like the
think
way we
it
did it.
increased the risk. I don't think I think we did it in a safe way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a key thing is that there was touch throughout the whole experience. There was a part where it was just we were talking or doing any kind of thinking through it. It was all experiential with the body, of the feeling and touch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I feel like she said something. I feel like she said this, and maybe I'm putting words in her mouth. But it seemed that she really trusted her body. like, I feel like that's the work coming through that she's been doing, like
Yeah.
being safe in her body. Maybe it was her and I's conversation that we had afterwards that I'm thinking of, but we talk often, her and I, about how when you start to feel safe in your body and your body knows that you're going to protect it and take care of it, that it's safer to go into these unknown experiences. It doesn't feel like, it doesn't automatically put you in this fear space. You can look at it more from curiosity.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, nothing comes to mind. Did anything else come up from your conversation with her?
Oh, it was just very affirming.
Yeah.
You know, we just went through it again, kind of just processing, you know, like that, you know, I think what I took from it most is that she trusts herself,
That's good.
which is really great.
That is good.
So cool. All right, well, I'm gonna stop the recording. Thanks for joining me, James.
Oh, certainly. My pleasure.